In this movie, we're going to look at the fundamentals of how to set up a scene for lighting. And I'm going to be using this light box as the beginning of that scene to demonstrate some of the fundamental lighting principles that we're going to encounter and that you absolutely need to know. In the case of this scene, we have a floor, some walls, a back wall here, a ceiling. We have a cube and a sphere. And I want to draw your attention to the fact that both the cube and the sphere have simply been added to the scene as primitives, and they do not have the static checkbox activated. In addition to that, if I switch to the lighting tab, and if you don't see the lighting tab, you can access that by choosing Window, Rendering, and then Lighting Settings. By accessing that tab, I've made sure that Auto Generate is activated, and in addition, Real-Time Global Illumination is also activated here. This is going to be critically important for our work in this video and in subsequent videos of this section. In creating the lighting for this scene, there are several things that we want to do to begin. First of all, if we want to begin at a completely new blank slate with no lights at all, you may think that the very first thing you should do is select the point light and then choose Delete to remove it. However, notice that in doing that, there is a problem. This scene has no lights at all, and yet the objects do not appear completely black or completely dark. There is no lighting, there is a total absence of lighting, yet if that's the case, how is it that we can still see some parts of these objects? For example, I can still see the red floor. If there were no lights at all, I should see nothing but darkness. The reason for this is because by default, Unity applies an ambient light to the scene. That is, a uniform color taken either from a skybox or from a single color or an image that it projects into the scene to use to illuminate it at a base level. We can find out more about the ambient light by moving to the Lighting tab. And from the Lighting tab and moving down to the Environment Lighting section, we can see the source of environment lighting. This may say skybox, gradient, or color. I'm going to switch this to color. When I switch it to color, you can see that the ambient color here is set to gray. This simply means that the color gray is going to be projected throughout the scene to create a base illumination. In this instance, I don't want that. So I'm going to set the ambient color from this gray to black. This reduces the scene to now be completely black, which is exactly what we want. Now, in addition to this, if we're trying to create photorealistic lighting using PBR textures, we also want to make sure that our project is using the correct color space. By default, Unity projects are configured to use the gamma color space, which is fine in many instances, but when we're using PBR realistic materials, we'll want to use the linear color space, and we can change that by changing the player settings for the project. To access those, I'm going to choose Edit, Project Settings, and then select Player from the menu. On accessing this menu, I'm going to expand the category that says Other Settings. When I expand that, you can see we have a color space setting. By default, it's set to gamma, but I'm going to change that to linear. And in changing that to linear, Unity will calculate and perform some internal optimizations. You can see down here on the bottom right-hand side that it bakes the lighting yet again. But in this instance now, we're using the linear color space, which is going to help us achieve better visual results. In doing this and in reaching this far by removing ambient lighting and enabling the linear color space, we're now in a position to start configuring the lighting for our scene. In this instance, at least for now, I'm going to start by adding a new point light by choosing Light and selecting Point Light to bring that into the scene. I'm going to move that up here to about the center of the scene, maybe down just a little bit. I'm going to activate soft shadows for the point light to get some shadow casting on the objects in the scene. Obviously, right now, this scene is still not ideal. There is a lot more to do. For example, right now I'm going to tweak the radius of the point light to something about there. I might tweak the brightness to increase the intensity of this object just a little bit. But still, even reaching this stage, the results are not inspiring at all. We have a point light that is at the center of this box. Indeed, it's casting illumination around, and it's highlighting the top of the cube here and also this sphere. But notice that the sides are facing away from the light appear completely black, as does this sphere here. This is because right now this scene does not take into account any indirect illumination. We'll see more about that in the next movie, so stay tuned.